Hi, everyone. My name is Colleen Gustitis, and I'm the Director of Product Marketing here at Cofense. I'd like to thank you all for joining us today for our webinar. It's entitled Dialing into Vishing, Defend Against This Escalating Threat. As technology continues to advance at a rapid pace, so do the techniques and tactics used by cyber criminals. We have seen a significant amount of phishing campaigns that aim to take the user out of the safety of their corporate security environments in an effort to trick them into giving sensitive information or possibly even releasing funds in response to this nefarious activity. Phishing is one of those escalating tactics being used by cyber criminals. While many organizations throw more technology at the problem, trying to remove the human element from the equation, at Cofense, we wholeheartedly believe that the combination of technology and trained, enabled employees that is your best line of defense against cybersecurity attacks. Joining us today for this webinar from Cofense are Amanda Wiesman, Cofense Customer Experience Director, and Zach Lewis, Senior Practice Manager, Cofense Customer Experience. A couple housekeeping topics before we get started. On the agenda today, we'll discuss the difference between phishing and vishing, where it sits within today's threat landscape. We'll move on to what you can do and best practices to condition your employees to recognize these threats and discuss those best practices that you can use to protect your organization. Finally, we'll talk a little bit about Cofense Managed Phishing Service and how it works, and then we'll open up the floor to questions. You can also ask your questions right in the chat on your console, and we will discuss those at the end. The webcast, we get this question a lot. The webcast is being recorded, and everyone here today will receive a link to the recorded session once the webcast has concluded. On the right side of your console, you'll find links to some helpful information and related materials. Now that that's out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Amanda and Zach to get started.
Hello, everyone. To get us started today, I want to provide a brief overview of phishing and vishing. While both rely on deception as the primary means for gathering personal information from an unsuspecting target, there are a few notable differences between the two tactics. Phishing is a fraudulent email sent to recipients that entices them to divulge sensitive information either through credential harvesting from a spoof login page or a malicious link, or by opening an infected attachment. On the other hand, phishing uses voice communication, such as voice phone calls or voice messaging, to entice the recipient to disclose personal information. Think voice plus phishing. There are a couple of variations of phishing worth mentioning here. Version 1, the attack begins with an email. However, instead of being directed to an internet site, the individual is provided a toll-free number and asked to enter personal information over the phone. Those who call the supposed customer service number are led through a series of voice-prompted menus that ask for account numbers, passwords, and other sensitive information. Typically, this is executed over a VoIP line. This is known as priming. Using multiple contact methods establishes a sense of trust. It makes the individual more likely to fall for the scam. While phishing's primary attack method is thought to be tied only to voice communications, over 85% of phishing attacks are said to start from free email services. Generally, these types of attacks are generic and very opportunistic, meaning they cast a very large net and hope to catch a few bites. Version 2, the individual is contacted directly over the phone. The call could either be live, or it could be a recorded message directing the individual to act. Oftentimes, the threat actor already has some personal information, such as an account or credit card number. which causes a false sense of security. These calls normally also come from a VoIP account as well. The last style of phishing attack uses malware-based pop-up messaging, and it's designed to cause alarm regarding an operating system or a technical problem. The message on screen will direct you to Microsoft support or an antivirus software company. The phone number actually sends you to a person or company impersonating these vendors. You might be asking yourself, how does phishing fit in today's threat landscape? Zach, why don't you take this one?
Thank you, Amanda. So let's talk about why phishing attacks are successful today. The threat actor will typically impersonate a legitimate organization, such as a bank or a government agency. And phishing attacks frequently will invoke a sense of urgency or fear in the receiver, causing them to really act impulsively and without proper authentication. The threat actor also may claim that there is an urgent issue with the individual's account or state that they are in legal trouble, leading the person to provide their sensitive information to resolve the situation swiftly. And in some cases, the threat actor may ask for payment or credentials to be transferred directly to their accounts, bypassing the individual's organization's security measures. Phishing threats have become more sophisticated in that threat actors include mention of business services they know are used by an organization, some of which the end users may speak with via phone on a regular basis. The phishing attacks also might not contain any malicious indicators of compromise, making the priming emails even easier to bypass existing email security controls. Phishing does have a long history that dates back to the early days of the telephone. The first recorded incident of phishing actually took place in the 1990s, when threat actors would often pretend to represent financial institutions upon calling unsuspected targets. And as time has went on, phishing techniques have become increasingly sophisticated. If we fast forward to today, the common phishing attack type seen by Cofense in corporate environments begins with an email, really instructing users to call a phone number and enter or provide personal or corporate information over the phone. And in a few minutes, we will show you examples of what today's common phishing attacks look like and analyze their characteristics. Phishing has become a growing concern for individuals and businesses alike, as it results in millions of dollars lost each year. According to the FTC, over $1.2 billion was lost to phishing attacks last year alone. And really, just how prevalent is phishing? According to surveys conducted among working adults, almost 7 in 10 respondents reported having encountered phishing attacks regularly. And in the first half of 2022, there was a 72% probability of receiving a phone attack each week for large enterprises. According to the FBI, phishing has seen a significant increase since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, and employees, whether they were in office or working remotely, are at a higher risk of a phishing attack than they were 2 years ago. All right, so to illustrate the devastating power of this type of attack, phishing was used successfully in the recent crippling cyber attacks on the MGM casinos. Sources state that as part of the attack, really, hackers found information about an employee on their LinkedIn, used the information to otherwise impersonate the employee, and called the help desk in disguise as this employee to gain access. The breach did disrupt casino operations, reduced daily revenue and cash flow by an estimated 10 to 20%, and ultimately dented its market cap by nearly $2 billion. Any organization can suffer from a negative impact to their operating revenue, all due to a basic social engineering attack such as phishing. As we know, social media sites serve as breeding grounds for threat actors, and coupling the information found on a social site with a phishing attack or call can be detrimental to your business. Using this recent phishing attack and its outcome as an example, this is why it is ever so important to implement a proper security awareness training program to align with the forever changing active threat landscape. Social engineering attacks, such as phishing and phishing, are still the number one way to breach a system and are really used as a gateway to launch more sophisticated attacks. With phishing attacks accounting for approximately 10% of the phishing attacks seen by the Cofense Phishing Defense Center in the past 6 months, phishing is a growing attack vector and a problem that Cofense is here to help you solve. Next, I'll pass it back to Amanda, who will show you examples of real phishing attacks seen in the wild today.
Perfect, thank you. So let's take a look at some of the more recent real-world phishing emails received by our Phishing Defense Center. As you might presume, it is much easier to get a spoofed brand imitation email through a secure email gateway when the email itself doesn't contain any malicious artifacts or indicators of compromise. Just like a threat actor can effortlessly spin up a free email account through services such as Gmail, iCloud, or Outlook, they can also readily obtain a phone number. Items of note here: all of these emails direct the recipient to a toll-free number. The emotional motivators are very similar, invoking a strong sense of urgency, curiosity, and fear. At face value, these emails also provide a misguided sense of trust by leveraging well-known providers. There are some more common phishing themes to watch for. To start, we have tech support fraud, typically packaged as your antivirus or malware renewal scams. Next, you'd have telemarketing fraud, such as free goods and services. Think of unbelievable vacation offerings that include hotel and flight discounts, free mobile devices, free streaming services, and so on. Similar to your tech support fraud, telemarketing fraud impersonates trusted service providers. For instance, common hotel and airline companies, cell phone carriers, as well as your internet and cable providers. Next, we have banking fraud. Common traits would include notifications of fraudulent or suspicious charges, PIN update requests, credit card interest rate reductions, and/or credit and finance forgiveness programs. And last, but certainly not least, we have government impersonation. This theme frequently includes tax return or tax payment issues, Medicare or Social Security payments, or even Social Security breach notifications. Since 2014, the FTC has gotten nearly 1.3 million reports about imposters that are leveraging phone scams to impersonate the government. This is more than any other type of fraud in that same time frame. Threat actors often use words like bureau or administration in their names to make their non-affiliations with the government sound more official. They also use generic names like sheriff's office to suggest a strong law enforcement presence. To understand the nuances of a VISH, I'm going to break down one of these examples. Upon closer examination, there are several obvious red flags in this email that is shown here. I'm going to start at the top here in the QuickBooks corporate logo. This is incorrect. A quick search online reveals the true branding. Moving down, you'll notice there's a generic greeting or salutation of "Dear Customer." The email also references an auto debit for your subscription, but it's really vague as to what account is going to be charged, merely citing a registered account. Notice there's a spelling inconsistency present here with the word authorized, spelling it with the S versus the Z. The email also strongly appeals to your sense of urgency, given the 24-hour deadline before the charges are going to apply. The signatory in the message is generic, and it's called merchant, with the company's name incorrectly capitalized. And in fact, this is the third time that we've seen the corporate name, and it's all been capitalized differently. Also, if you do a quick search online, it determines that this is not the correct company phone number for this vendor. Also, while I was looking on that same website, I was able to discern that the pricing shown for the business essentials plan is very different than what is actually represented here. And notice how banking statement is capitalized incorrectly. Lastly, towards the bottom, you're going to see there's a grammatical issue in the statement, and it's asking you to call on the phone number versus calling at a phone number. Now that we know what to look for, Zach, what can we do to better equip our organizations to mitigate through these phishing attacks?
All right. So as part of your greater security awareness and training program, it is really beneficial to focus on a holistic set of training. There are several measures you can take to protect your organization from phishing attacks. And some of these include, but are not limited to, the need to educate and simulate phishing attacks. You heard from Amanda a moment ago and saw examples of real phishing attacks seen in the wild today. These are the real phishing attacks that should be simulated. Users then should also be conditioned to report these attacks to incident responders. Next, do not take a cold call at face value. Ask follow-up and challenging questions, and always check the emotional drivers of the call. Just as you would not want to give out personal information if asked via email, think to never give it out over the phone also due to an unsolicited phone call. Use your best judgment. Phishing attacks generate a strong sense of typical urgency and fear. And in today's operating environments, many turn to email instead of a phone call. Stay vigilant, and if you do receive a phone call with an ask for information or an email with a phone number to call that just doesn't seem right, confirm the legitimacy of the ask before acting. Question requests for payments in gift cards or wire transfer, especially if you're not in a finance role. Gift cards are now the payment method of choice for governmental imposter scammers. Also, be suspicious of a call claiming to be from a government or finance agency asking for money or information. Government agencies never call you out of the blue, demanding or offering money. When in doubt, hang up and independently seek out the real number for the agency and call them directly. Also, don't automatically trust caller ID. It's very easy to spoof. If you want to speak with your bank, as an example, call the number on the back of your card. And if it's another company you do business with, don't be afraid to go to the company's official website and look up their main customer support number. Also, implement multi-factor authentication to make it harder for attackers to bypass existing security measures. An example here would be to consider restricting VPN connections by using mechanisms like hardware checks or installed certificates, so user input alone is not enough access to access the corporate VPN. Monitor your organization's voice communications and consider observing patterns to detect suspicious activity and identify potential threats. As part of this, consider granting least privilege access based on verifying who is requesting access, the context of the request, and the risk of the access environment. And lastly, stay current and up to date. Keep employees in your systems updated with the latest security trends, software, patches, and any tools to protect your organization better against phishing scams. Technology can also be used to block unknown numbers and add mobile apps to route calls to your company's VoIP. A phishing attack can lay the groundwork to launch greater cyber attacks on your business. And if you do fall victim, a solid security response can help minimize the potential impact. And here are a few steps to take post-incident. One, notify authorities and incident responders. Verify which institution and agencies must be alerted and report the incident. And at the same time, alerting incident responders will allow your organization to handle the incident properly from the start. the incident response plan should be updated over time to align with any new security threats, such as vishing, as they rise. And then determine if the business continuity plan should be triggered based on the severity of the attack. 2, block accounts and phone numbers related to the attack. Temporarily blocking the affected user accounts, reviewing their transactions to identify any potential fraudulent activity, and blocking the phone numbers used to carry out the attack can really help minimize the impact on your business and ultimately help prevent a threat from spreading. And 3, contact affected individuals and consider notifying the greater organization. Notifying all individuals who may have been impacted by the breach and provide them with solutions to protect themselves from identity theft and fraud. You could also benefit from notifying the greater organization of the attack details to ideally promote awareness of vishing so that others are armed to report similar attacks and hopefully not fall victim. Vishing is an ever-present and rising threat that organizations really cannot afford to ignore. It is everyone's responsibility to proactively safeguard your organization by implementing any appropriate security measures and educating employees on the risk of falling victim to a vishing scam. And with the right proactive security measures in place, combined with any immediate action if an attack does occur, your organization can minimize the risk posed by vishing scams. I will now pass it back to Amanda, who will offer insight into Cofense's new-to-market managed vishing solution.
As Zach previously mentioned, one of the best solutions to mitigating vishing is conditioning your employees on how to spot the attack. What better way to do so than with your hands-on experience offered by simulating the threat? Here's a closer look at Cofense's managed vishing program. Cofense will send quarterly vishing simulations to your employees. Susceptible employees will be informed immediately that the simulation is part of a larger company-sanctioned security awareness training program and will be provided general guidance on vishing. These employees will also receive additional follow-on training content to reinforce how to spot a vishing attack, and they'll be educated on how to report suspicious messages. Post-vishing simulation reporting will also be provided so you can assess your organization's overall risk. You might be asking yourself now, how does the managed vishing service work? Well, I'll show you. As stated previously, 85% of vishing attacks start from free email services. You also saw samples of recent real-world vishing attacks sent to corporations today that we've seen through our Phishing Defense Center. Cofense mimics this style of vishing by starting with a seemingly innocent email. It will direct the employee to a toll-free number. From here, your recipients have several options. They can dial the number, report the email as suspicious, delete the email, or click the phone number. Just like a Choose Your Adventure book, the action an individual takes will dictate where their story ends. If an employee reports the message using Cofense Reporter, they will be immediately presented with a dialog box that congratulates them on successfully identifying a vishing simulation. If they click the phone number, they will be directed to an educational page with information on best practices to avoid vishing. Deleting the message results in the end of the exercise. Dialing into the service begins the phone prompt process for that employee. The follow-on training takes place after the employee has been deemed susceptible. I have a few examples of content on our next slide. Cofense offers world-class security and awareness training content designed to educate employees on real threats facing your organizations today. Available in a variety of formats, such as adaptive learning modules, high engagement pieces, micro-learnings, simulator tools, and much more to increase your employees' engagement and deepen their understanding. Cofense security and awareness training resources will be leveraged throughout your managed phishing program to reinforce those learning concepts related to this unique style of threat. we'll be reaching out to our existing customers who are interested in our managed vishing service to give you an overview of the offering and share more details about our current incentives. If you'd like to get your consultation scheduled now, you can just click that Book Now button in the console, and we'll take it from there. Back to you, Colleen.
Well, thank you so much, Amanda and Zach, for that great content. For those of you joining us today, if you have any questions, the Q&A is open, and we do have a few questions. I can take the first one because it's more administrative, but someone asked if we were sending a copy of this presentation. We will be sending links to the recording of the presentation, which of course walks through the presentation, but as the PowerPoint presentation, we won't be sending that. We'll just be sending the recording. Another question we had was asking if spelling and grammar issues are still common in today's environment. If you guys could address that.
Sure, I can take that one, Colleen. So yes, we are still seeing some basic spelling and grammar issues in today's attacks, but what's making these attacks, increasingly more sophisticated as there are brands being included in these attacks for legitimate business services that your organization might use, and coupling with the brands. Obviously, your existing email security controls might not be configured to block emails or domains that appear to come from services your organization might use. So I hope that answers your question and just offers a little bit more context.
Yeah, I was going to say too, Zach, I know what we're seeing today, the examples shown on screen here were part of what we've seen come in through our Phishing Defense Center. So real examples of phish today with spelling and grammatical errors still present. I know oftentimes we talk a lot about, AI and machine learning and that sort of thing, and how attacks are getting a little bit more sophisticated. But I think what you're mentioning, Zach, is we're still seeing those, right? We still see the usual grammar, spelling issues, albeit maybe a little bit less frequent, but we're also seeing a leveraging of brands to help elevate the use of the threat.
Great, thank you
Amanda.
both. One good question that I just saw come through was a question about, can this be integrated into our current PhishMe schedule and also be reflected in those reports?
I can take this one. So yes, so this would be in addition to your regularly scheduled phishing simulation program. You would incorporate a quarterly phishing simulation to your employees as well. And we offer unique reporting based on the phishing simulation. So you'll be able to see how exactly your organization did at the time of that unique campaign that was delivered.
Great. Just another question. How many phishing attacks is Cofense seeing in the wild these days?
I can take that one. So in the past 6 months, 10% of the malicious emails identified by the Cofense Phishing Defense Center have been phishing attacks. So phishing, it's safe to say that phishing attacks are increasingly on the rise, which is why it's ever so important to look to condition your employees on how to identify and report these attacks.
Okay, great. Does phishing potentially violate terms of service usage with our phone carriers, since the nature of this test is knowingly and purposefully making fake fraudulent calls? Question mark.
It is a direct inbound versus an outbound call. So there are several restrictions today with carriers and calling them directly. So basically what happens is inside of the phishing simulation, the phone number is present and the individual is asked to directly call that number. So versus it being outbound, it is an inbound call.
Great, thanks, Amanda. What are some of the common techniques used by vishers to to see victims?
Typically, we're seeing a large sense of. Go ahead, Zach.
Go ahead, Amanda. I apologize. Go ahead. You started.
Go ahead. You're fine.
Okay. So several items here. So first and foremost, threat actors are kind of acting in a business as usual manner. Again, sending you an email with maybe some type of business process that you could be used to seeing in your inbox today. But other than that, threat actors are including senses of fear or urgency, which otherwise encourage the end user to quickly react to the requests in an email, essentially, in this case, asking to call a phone number to divulge some type of sensitive information or some type of corporate credentials that otherwise would cause a greater attack to impact the organization. So there really is a series of events and emotional drivers happening that are being included in today's vishing attacks. And I know that when we do send out the recording here, you'll be able to see what Amanda covered in terms of the samples we're seeing today and the threat that Amanda dissected to see some of those visual clues and emotional drivers.
Great, thanks, Zach. We have a question around U.S. phone numbers. A U.S. phone number in an EU vishing simulation will be suspicious immediately, I think. So do we have a solution for the EU region?
We will be rolling out a program that will be international or global as well. So we'll be looking at taking numbers that are toll-free and then free service numbers that make it relevant to the location where the employee is housed.
All righty, let's see. There was someone asking about proof of attending this due to some CPE credits. I will need to follow up with one of our administrators of our webinar series, and we will get back to you personally on that one. All right. I think we have addressed all of the questions that we can answer on today's call. Zach and Amanda, thank you again for everything that you presented today. If we didn't get to your question, folks who are on the call, we will definitely respond back to you personally. As we talked about in today's session, thousands of vishing emails land in employee inboxes every day, actively targeting people and exposing businesses to costly security breaches. It's what we've tried to portray here and what we've tried to get the message across is that it's critical that your team is prepared and they aren't tricked into divulging sensitive company information. And Cofense is not only happy to help, but very well positioned to help you all in preparing your organizations for that. We've combined our industry leading and world-class simulations with new voice response technology to create a unique security offering to help our customers protect against dangerous threats like vishing attacks. We'll be reaching out to each of you after the session to offer an opportunity to go deeper into this new solution and capabilities that Cofense is bringing to market. We're happy to partner together to keep your businesses safe and secure. So really that's it for today. Again, I want to thank everyone for joining us. We hope to see you at our next webinar. Our next webinar is actually focused on insights from our popular annual report. So we'll be going over the 2024 annual State of Email Security Report that'll be coming out in February. It's a highly anticipated report, and we'll take a deeper dive into the most prevalent security attacks that are targeting businesses. and what you can do to protect your organizations from these. We'll be sending out more details on how you can be included in the online events and also be one of the first to receive the report. In the meantime, have a wonderful day and a wonderful rest of the end of the month. And thank you again for joining us.
Thank you all.